Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Here's a lighthearted story that starts off as an ordinary day but takes a delightful and unexpected twist. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How I accidentally became a valet and made $20. So on that particular day, my girlfriend and I were going to go shopping together. It's not something particularly noteworthy, I know, but we don't get to see each other in person very often, so we make the most of the opportunities we have. In any case, I'm currently waiting for my girlfriend to come pick me up at the front entrance of the hotel where I'm staying. At the time, she was still residing in the apartment that her mother owned, so staying with her was a huge no-no. I'm sitting there, going through Reddit, when all of a sudden this elderly woman pulls up in her SUV, decides to leave it there rather than in a parking spot, and then walks inside, most likely to check in. I take it in stride and return my attention to my phone. A few minutes later, the lady steps back out of the building and asks, "Excuse me, would you be so kind as to park my car for me?" Due to the fact that I was the only person around, it was impossible for her to be conversing with anyone else. I wasn't sure if I was mistakenly thinking that I was a valet guy or anything else. During the time that I'm waiting for my partner, I rationalize that I don't have anything else to do, so I respond by saying, "Sure, I'm able to do that. Is that location over there all right?" I indicate the parking location that's closest to what's available. "As long as my car is nice and parked, it's fine by me," she says as she offers me her keys during our conversation. As a result, I jump into her vehicle and drive it directly to the location without any problems. Because by the time I get out of my car, my girlfriend has already arrived, and she's probably thinking, what the hell is going on, because her boyfriend's getting out of the car of another person. I make a small gesture of greeting to my partner, then I walk up to the lady and hand her the keys a second time. She thanked me for my assistance by handing me a $20 bill while I was doing so. Despite the fact that I informed her that she was not required to do that, she insisted on doing it nonetheless, claiming that I was not required to park her car either. I then thanked her for the money and got into the automobile that belonged to my girlfriend. Everything I can do is look at my girlfriend and say, "I'm not quite sure. This is the only thing I can do," when she asked me what just took place. I took the time to explain everything to her while we were at the shopping center later on, and we both had a nice chuckle with each other about it. So granted, this is not the kind of drama that people are probably used to seeing from this sub, but I thought that this wholesome little bit was deserving of being here. This is one of those rare wholesome tales where a little bit of serendipity and kindness collide for a perfect moment. I love how you just went with the flow, parking the SUV without hesitation and handling the situation with such casual ease. It's like you were a one-time honorary valet for the day, and the fact that the lady insisted on tipping you shows her gratitude for your willingness to help. It's refreshing to read about simple, good-natured interactions like this. Sometimes the world feels like it's all chaos and drama, but stories like yours remind us that small acts of kindness can make everyone's day just a little brighter, even if it means becoming an accidental valet for a few minutes. And our second story. How I accidentally made my old NGO realize they needed me. Too late. My former job was an NGO recruited me to complete what was thought to be an impossible assignment, contacting and winning the support of various groups famously tough to find. With over $1.2 million funding riding on it, it was a somewhat important topic. Not to brag, but one of very few in my nation. This is something I am actually rather good at. I started working and applied some really unusual techniques. At first, management seemed to be good with it since it worked so remarkably. The company went from being almost useless within 8 months to having a tiny army of volunteers, active organizations, and outspoken advocates, and a reputation for being the most radical and intriguing player on the scene. The truth is that my success came from covering up the organizational ineffectiveness. This is as good as it'll get as long as they neglect some more fundamental reforms. Except nobody appeared very eager to apply any more thorough adjustments. Actually, they started engaging in increasingly more problematic behavior, such as staff members' public racist remarks, which made it more difficult to keep the support. I kept warning that this would not go well, and at some point, this and my less than perfect approaches angered management enough to decide to terminate me. I told my management that should they wish to save all the work, they would at least have to find someone with comparable experience, which will be quite challenging. Again, very few experts on this. My management responded by insisting that I create a record for my future replacement and, more especially, that someone with absolutely zero past knowledge could grasp it. Zero knowledge, you wonder? Great. I sat down and produced a long document. This comprised just the most obvious fundamentals and essentially useless knowledge. No, you cannot call people. No, not even when they aren't present, written as though for a third grader. They won't need that document anyhow if they choose someone qualified. If they choose someone ignorant, they most likely will be able to grasp it. I ended my employment there in September, but stayed in touch with some of my former crew. Half the volunteers I gathered left before the end of November. The more than 200 people engaged in one of the flagship initiatives simply stopped coming up. The Helping Network ceased responding entirely. One of the other long-running initiatives was attempted to be carried on, but it failed brilliantly and stopped running following one more session since they knew neither how nor why it succeeded. When they tried to imitate it this December, just 7 people came up, hence the annual fundraiser I organized had no bearing. After also going public regarding the management being both out of touch and aggressive, 3 of the organizations opted to leave and operate under a different host. Oh, it also appears as of right now, they lost the $1.2 million in funding. This is a fascinating case of corporate short-sightedness and the consequences of undervaluing expertise. It seems your former NGO was so fixated on immediate results and maintaining their comfort zone that they completely missed the importance of structural change and the unique value you brought to the table. You essentially gave them a golden goose, and instead of nurturing it, they decided to cook it. You clearly communicated the challenges and even provided them with a roadmap to sustain the progress, though understandably, your third-grade manual approach was a fitting response to their unrealistic expectations. Their insistence on replacing expertise with basic instructions underscores how disconnected they were from the realities of the work. The fallout's almost poetic in its predictability. Volunteers disengaged, projects collapsed, and funding disappeared, all because they failed to appreciate that your unconventional methods were what made their success possible in the first place. The loss of that $1.2 million in funding is the final nail in the coffin, a financial echo of the broader organizational failure. And our last story, Karen's BMW versus the disabled parking spot. My younger brother Alex is the sweetest kid in the world. He's 12 years old, but he can't walk or communicate, and his mental age is about 6 months. Since he requires specialized education, we're fortunate to live in a city with an incredible school for kids like him. Every morning and afternoon, a wheelchair-accessible school bus picks him up and drops him off right in front of our house. To make things easier, the city designated a 4-meter spot on the curb as a wheelchair pickup and drop-off zone. We even have clear signs stating reserved, wheelchair access. For 2 years, this setup worked perfectly. Most of our neighbors are kind, understanding people who never parked in the spot. Unfortunately, the neighborhood has been slowly gentrifying, and with that has come a wave of entitled newcomers like Karen. One Monday morning in September, we woke up to find a shiny burgundy BMW parked squarely in Alex's designated spot. Not partially in it, not close to it, completely in it. To make matters worse, there were at least a dozen open parking spots along the street. I recognized the car immediately. It usually sat about 3 houses down in front of Karen's place. Karen had moved into the neighborhood a few months earlier, and while I don't know much about her, I already suspected she wasn't exactly community-minded. We followed the proper steps, we took pictures, recorded her license plate, and called the police. To their credit, the officers showed up quickly and slapped her car with a hefty $700 ticket. Around noon, Karen came storming up to our house, pounding on the door. I was home alone, so I made a snap decision to record the interaction on my phone before answering. The moment I opened the door, she started yelling. "You set me up," she shouted. "You must have put those signs up this morning just to get me ticketed." I tried to explain that the signs had been there for 2 years, but she wouldn't let me get a word in. "This is discrimination," she screeched. "You're targeting me because I drive a BMW." She went on to claim that wheelchair spots were unnecessary and that Alex could just get on the bus from the next spot over. She demanded that we pay her ticket while spewing every entitled excuse under the sun. When she finally paused for breath, I simply said, "Okay," and shut the door in her face. She rang the doorbell 5 more times before storming off. That evening, I told my parents what had happened and gave my dad a copy of the recording. My dad posted the story along with the recording and a photo of Karen's car to our neighborhood Facebook group, which has about 3,000 members. The response was overwhelming. People were outraged. Some even vowed to take action, though we didn't expect anything to actually happen. The next morning, as I walked to school, I passed Karen's car parked in its usual spot. That's when I noticed the front right tire was flat. Upon closer inspection, it was slashed. Karen must have seen the Facebook post because she didn't come back to our house to complain, but in the following weeks, she couldn't escape the fallout. Whenever Karen appeared in public, neighbors would stop her to remind her of her selfishness. "How's that ticket treating you?" one older gentleman asked loudly enough for the whole block to hear. By November, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's window. Curious, I looked up the listing and saw that she was asking $90,000 less than what she paid just a few months earlier. It seemed Karen wanted out of the neighborhood as quickly as possible. Karen's entitled antics are something else, but your family and the community handled it perfectly. Parking in a clearly marked wheelchair-accessible spot despite plenty of open spaces was selfish enough, but showing up to your door accusing you of discrimination and demanding you pay her ticket? That's next-level arrogance. Your calm response, closing the door in her face, was gold. The $90,000 loss on her house sale? That's the universe balancing the scales. Karen came into a close-knit community, disrupted it, and learned the hard way that entitlement doesn't fly when everyone else values decency. Hopefully her departure restores peace, and Alex gets the respectful neighborhood he deserves. Karen may have thought her BMW gave her power, but in the end, she drove herself right out of town. And that's the kind of justice we love to see. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.